at 6. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. The stock market took another deep dive today. Worries about the still weakening U.S. dollar and renewed doubts about President Reagan's deficit-cutting abilities sent the Dow Jones Industrial Average plunging almost 77 points. CBS News business correspondent Ray Brady explains now why, in spite of soothing words from President Reagan, there is such a growing sense of urgency about what may be ahead for the economy.
It was Wall Street's third Black Monday in 2 months, and it began early this morning in London and Tokyo while Americans were sleeping. Then it spread here, investors pounding down the dollar to record low prices against the German mark and the Japanese yen.
What the world is saying, in effect, is Washington, and particularly Reagan administration, your economic policies are not up to dealing with the problems that we have. Get to work and think of something better.
In this country, investors hammered down the Dow Jones Industrial Average as much as 111 points before the market recovered some of its loss late in the day. But at the close, there were 13 stocks down in price for every stock up in price. In Washington, President Reagan tried to encourage business leaders by defending the recent budget deal with Congress.
The result of these negotiations is not a perfect deal. Far from it. But it's an adequate deal, the best we could get, and it's a good first step.
Today's drop in stocks caused Senator Dole to say that first step better come soon.
That if we don't act very quickly on what we did put together and what is now supported by the leadership in the Congress, the President of the United States, then we're going to have more and more difficulty in the next few weeks.
I think the market is looking for something more dramatic than Mr. Reagan discussed today. I think they're looking for some decisiveness on getting the budget deficits under control.
Wall Street is racked with other worries as well. It's concerned about inflation coming back and the possibility of a recession. Both bad news for stocks.
Most investors seem confused about the economy, and until the outlook becomes more clear, they say, the market may have trouble turning around. Dan?
Thanks, Ray. It'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. A major offshore earthquake today rolled through parts of Alaska and Canada's remote and colorful Yukon territory. The quake was centered in the Gulf of Alaska, some 300 miles southeast of Anchorage. It measured at least 7.4 on the Richter scale. A magnitude 7 earthquake is capable of, quote, widespread damage, but there were no immediate reports of any damage or injuries. Government officials say a small group of Cuban inmates holding 90 hostages in an Atlanta prison today blocked an apparent agreement to swap 50 of those hostages in exchange for a news conference. Yesterday's settlement ending a similar siege at a Louisiana prison is apparently having little effect on the week-long standoff in Atlanta, and Peter Van Sant reports both sides are talking very tough.
With negotiations going nowhere and more than 1,000 Cubans still defiantly holding 90 hostages at the Atlanta prison, federal authorities this afternoon warned the Cubans that if they harm any of the hostages, violence will be met with violence.
Suffice it to say that the United States government has a number of law enforcement agents at the Atlanta facility. If any of the hostages are harmed, they are preparing to retake the prison by force.
The government's tougher stand may be a reaction to growing tensions inside the prison. Radio transmissions from inmates have grown more threatening.
They're in position to attack us. Get all the gas cans ready so we will blow this whole place up. God bless us all.
One source close to the negotiations says the Atlanta Cubans have become hard-headed, demanding total freedom. The source also says the Cubans here think the Oakdale Agreement is a lousy deal and that it will have no impact on their negotiations.
That a majority of the detainees favor trying to come to an agreement on an end to this situation. Unfortunately, a small but aggressive minority appears to be able to intimidate this majority.
Sources have told CBS News that the Atlanta Cubans won't accept the terms of the Oakdale Agreement because there is no promise not to deport the inmates. No promise that the riot won't be used against them in their review hearings, and no limit on how much time the review hearings will take. Inmates have asked that Miami Bishop Agustin Roman, who helped end the Oakdale standoff, be allowed to enter the Atlanta talks. But so far, the government has refused. Tonight, the siege goes on. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Atlanta.
A new CBS News New York Times poll is out tonight. It finds Jesse Jackson the definite frontrunner among the 7 Democrats running for president. That is, the 6 officially running, plus New York's Governor Mario Cuomo, who still insists he isn't actually candidate. Jackson leads them all, including Cuomo, but his win numbers don't tell the whole story. At first glance, our poll taken last week shows Jesse Jackson as the big winner. By well over 2-to-1, Jackson is preferred by Democrats over even his closest rivals for the 1988 Democratic presidential nomination.
In the last 4 years, Jackson has made the move from being perceived in '84 as an outsider candidate, a protest candidate, to someone who carries now a message.
When Jackson opened his Iowa headquarters this year, he promised to reach out to all Americans. But according to our poll, they don't seem to be reaching back. While Jackson clearly is the best-known Democratic candidate, our poll shows that Republicans and Democrats overwhelmingly share an unfavorable view of Jackson. And again, by more than 2-to-1, say he does not have enough experience to be a good president. Mayor Harold Washington's funeral in Chicago today attracted much of the nation's political establishment, including current Democratic presidential candidates. It was a testimonial to the emerging power of black politicians. But just how powerful is Jesse Jackson? In our poll, he loses 2-to-1 to George Bush.
National polls and primary campaigns are notoriously inaccurate indicators of eventual strength in the nomination process.
During today's funeral for Chicago's Mayor Washington, Jackson used his considerable skills as a eulogizer and mediator. He was one of many who turned out to honor the memory of one of the nation's best-known big city mayors and to try to keep the legacy alive in a successor. Frank Courier reports on Chicago in mourning and in transition.
Church bells tolled throughout Chicago as the city declared this an official day of mourning, and thousands turned out in a cold drizzle to remember Harold Washington.
He was a fair mayor, and he was just a sweet man, I think, and I loved him.
The funeral cortege for Chicago's first black mayor stretched for miles through the predominantly black South Side neighborhoods where Washington grew up and was loved most. Mourners from throughout the country, senators, mayors, presidential hopefuls paid tribute to the man who during 5 often stormy years as mayor had achieved status as a kind of folk hero and emerged the city's single most powerful figure since the late Richard Daley.
I'll see you in the morning, buddy. We will not let you down. We will not let you down. We will not let you down.
In a weekend of extraordinary Chicago-style political gamesmanship, Washington's longtime supporters and arch-rivals began maneuvering for the battle over who will succeed the late mayor.
Even as an estimated 1 million mourners were filing past Washington's open coffin at City Hall, coalitions of black and white aldermen huddled in a race to seize power. The city council could pick a successor as early as tomorrow, probably a black from within its ranks, to carry on the legacy of Harold Washington, a mayor whose clout often seemed bigger than life, and now, so too, his memory. Frank Courier, CBS News, Chicago.
With so many confusing claims about the strength of pain relievers, maybe you're confused too. Well, nothing you can take without a prescription is more effective for headaches than extra-strength Tylenol. Nothing. And the largest clinical headache study ever against ibuprofen confirms it. And something else you should know. Tylenol doesn't irritate your stomach the way aspirin and even ibuprofen can. If nothing is more effective for headaches, and Tylenol is gentler to your stomach, shouldn't your choice be Tylenol?
Today you need an insurance company that's sure-footed. A company that looks out for you year after year. A company with experience. You need the Hartford. When you need us most, we're at our best. That's the Hartford difference.
What could top an antacid that works great, that's sodium-free and calcium-rich? Great cherry taste. Cherry-flavored, calcium-rich Rolaids antacid. The relief you want, the taste you desire.
Announcing a new addition to the Lysol spray family. Lysol Light Scent. Unlike the heavy perfume smell of some ordinary air fresheners, Lysol Light Scent's got a light, clean scent. It kills germs on surfaces, cleans the air, gives you all the power of Lysol spray. Get new Lysol Light Scent. They're going fast. Lysol Disinfectant Spray Light Scent, the newest addition to the Lysol family.
The Soviet-run government of Poland offered the people a rare chance to vote on what were called economic and political reforms. And tonight, the government conceded it has lost. Bert Quint reports.
Authorities had urged Poles to vote in yesterday's referendum for their proposal to move Poland practically overnight from bumbling bureaucratic socialism to a system based on supply and demand. Part of the cost would be immediate steep price increases, vital to save the economy. Nearly a third of the electorate stayed home, their way of saying no.
It is quite a good omen that people simply didn't sign the blank check for the authorities.
Of those who did vote, 2 of every 3 voted yes. But the proposal needed a majority of the electorate as a whole, and with so many abstentions, it didn't get that majority. People were so worried about proposed price increases of up to 110% that they bought everything they could find on the eve of the referendum, leaving Poland's shelves and shop windows emptier than usual. In the West, a rejection like this could cause a government to fall. Here, there's no form to follow. But obviously, Communist Party chief Jaruzelski now becomes more vulnerable to hardliners within the party. And if Mikhail Gorbachev was floating a trial balloon here for reforms he'd like to make in the Soviet Union, he's now seen it shot down. Bert Quint, CBS News, Warsaw.
A U.S. State Department spokesman said today it is up to Haitian leaders to organize new elections. Yesterday, those leaders called off voting after a rash of attacks and one full-scale massacre at a polling place. Victoria Carderi is there.
Another body lay on the street this morning, but the overnight violence was minor compared to yesterday's Election Day carnage. The blood-stained schoolhouse where people went to cast their ballots. The morgue where more than 24 victims lay unclaimed. They serve as bloody reminders of what happened when the Haitian people tried to reach for democracy. The violence was relentless.
And they came in armed with rocks and with guns, and they shot and they threw and they beat old people with the rocks.
Start shooting, and they kept on shooting at least 6 minutes.
The military government of General Henri Namfi is now in full control. Yesterday, the self-proclaimed commander-in-chief declared there would be elections, but he dissolved the Independent Electoral Council, throwing his sincerity into question.
Electoral fraud. That is, elections being rigged, being prefabricated by the government in place. That's what they want to do, and that's what the people don't want to happen.
The army had been blamed for standing by passively while Duvalier loyalists traveled from polling place to polling place, terrorizing the electorate. Witnesses now say the army actively participated in the massacre. This journalist was at the schoolhouse.
C'est l'armée. It was the army with helmets and fouls. Tell us that. It was the army that was shooting at us.
The country, shocked at the atrocities, seems to be at a standstill today. Many stores are closed, and one source said a national strike may be forming. Victoria Corderi, CBS News, Port-au-Prince.
France today released an Iranian terror suspect who'd been barricaded inside the Iranian embassy in Paris since July. The man was wanted in connection with bombings that killed 11 people in Paris last year, but he was let go in return for a French diplomat as part of a larger, shadowy secret deal between the French and Iran. Doug Tennell reports.
After more than 4 months of detention in Iran, French diplomat Paul Touré was back in Paris tonight, freed in an exchange that some have condemned as caving in to terrorist blackmail. Touré was swapped for Iranian Vahid Gorgi, once described as a translator at Iran's embassy in France, but suspected of a far more sensitive job. When French police sought to question Gorgi as a terrorist suspect, he took refuge inside his embassy. Touré was then detained in Tehran, and the so-called embassy war began. But after 2 French hostages in Lebanon were unexpectedly freed on Friday, Prime Minister Jacques Chirac thanked none other than the government of Iran for all its help. Chirac denied a report in the authoritative Paris daily Le Monde that an undisclosed amount of hard, cold cash helped to buy freedom for the hostages, but Le Monde is still standing by the story of a ransom tonight. In the meantime, former French hostage Jean-Louis Normandin revealed today that he spent the last 10 months with 2 American hostages in Lebanon, University Administrator Joseph Cicipio and American writer Edward Tracy.
They are in good health and still waiting.
In an apartment block somewhere in Beirut's Muslim quarter, Normandin, Tracy, and Cicipio shared a single tiny room, chained to a wall. Cicipio helped Normandin with English.
My teacher was Jew, but I don't know if it's very good because I'm used to speak only with 2 people, Jew and Edward.
The deal between Tehran, Paris, and the kidnappers has freed 3 Frenchmen as of tonight, but France is still uncertain of the price. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Paris.
Helicopter crews scanned a remote jungle area of Thailand today but turned up no sign of the South Korean airliner that disappeared from the sky yesterday. 115 people were aboard the KAL flight from Baghdad to Seoul. And still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, Pentagon correspondent David Martin has an eye-opening look inside the Red Army.
If you thought you had to give up comfort to get a close shave, Norelco says, think again. Their revolutionary shaving system shaves skin close in a way that's incredibly comfortable. As the hair enters the chamber, the patented lift and cut system lifts each hair and holds it a split second before a blade cuts it. So it's possible to shave skin close without the blades even touching the skin. Norelco Rotitract, where close and comfortable come face to face. This Stetson pre-shave can be yours free with selected Norelco razors. This Pontiac Trans Am could be yours, with a little luck. Enter Norelco's Quest for the Gold sweepstakes. Look for details wherever Norelco razors are sold.
No one knows I just got dentures, and I don't want anything to blow it.
Fixodent and forget it. Fixodent helps fix loose spots for a strong hold that lasts longer than any leading cream. Use Fixodent and forget it.
It's been a long day, big boy. Feel like you still got something left? Sure you do. 'Cause you got one smart mama, and she got you off the ground this morning with a real winner. Howdy ho, wheat, time to gloat. 'Cause you don't wear no sugar coat. You just can't beat that pure whole wheat. Now go tell your mama what the big boys eat.
Next week's U.S.-Soviet Summit Conference will focus on nuclear arms, and both sides are trying to accentuate the positive, but negotiators for both sides know that the enormous Russian army may well benefit plenty. CBS News Pentagon correspondent David Martin is just back from the Soviet Union after having a rare look at Moscow's army and training. Here is part 1 of his special report, Inside the Red Army.
Russian tanks on the move. To the west, the ultimate nightmare. The beginning of the end might look something like this. Tanks and more tanks. Armored personnel carriers with Soviet infantrymen inside. All breaking out on the North German plain. The object? Overwhelm NATO troops in Europe. Compel them to surrender before their political leaders can make the unthinkable decision of using nuclear weapons. The Soviets, of course, don't see it that way. To hear them tell it, these forces exist solely for the defense of the homeland, a vast country which requires a vast army to protect itself.
We're often blamed with trying to accumulate a great deal of arms to obtain superiority, that we are intensely preparing for a war. However, 70 years of the history of the Soviet state demonstrates quite the opposite. We want to live in peace with other peoples.
For reasons known only to the Kremlin, but which presumably have something to do with the upcoming summit, the Soviet government permitted CBS News to visit a military base outside Moscow and observe its troops on maneuvers. It was an impressive sometimes fearsome demonstration, but it was only one very small part of a very large army.
Remember, what you're seeing is only a snapshot, and a glossy one at that. But this is the first close-up American television has ever taken of the Soviet military.
Our host didn't seem at all worried that we'd see something we shouldn't. This day was much too carefully planned for there to be much chance of that. Their main concern seemed to be that we would use these pictures to portray the Soviets as aggressors bent on world domination. Frankly, we can't tell you a thing about what the leaders of the Soviet Union might do with these forces in the future, nor could the Soviet officers we spoke to. But we can give you a first-hand report on the Soviet soldier and his weapons, forces the Kremlin can call on to back up its foreign policy. The Soviet Union spends 3 to 4 times more of its national wealth on defense than does the United States. Its army is enormous, 6 million men according to U.S. estimates, almost 3 times the size of the American military, but figures can be misleading. Take these construction troops in downtown Moscow. There are almost 1 million of them working on government and civilian projects, soldiers in name only who have almost no military training. And there are hundreds of thousands of others, border guards, political officers. Troops like these don't exist in the American army.
The size of the Soviet military, the burden it places on the civilian economy, would not be tolerated in the United States. But the Soviet Union sees itself as surrounded, NATO in the west and China in the east. Stop and think for a moment what the American military might look like if Canada and Mexico were hostile powers.
For the Soviets, the best defense, indeed the only defense, is an overwhelming offense. For them, a war could be purely defensive and still be fought on the enemy's territory. It all looks very intimidating, but if this were the real thing, these tanks would be running a gauntlet of anti-tank missiles and operating in unfamiliar terrain, not the well-traveled training grounds outside Moscow. Even in a carefully rehearsed demonstration, equipment refuses to cooperate, and soldiers run out of ammunition. Not all the Soviet Army's 50,000 tanks are as modern as the model we were shown, and just because it's new doesn't mean it will work. This tank has an automatic ejector for spent shell casings, but you can see the crew has to toss a hot casing out by hand.
The advent of high-tech weapons, with all their costs and complexities, poses major new problems for an army which until now has relied on large numbers of simple weapons manned by young conscripts.
Tomorrow we will take a close look at the soldiers who man these weapons, mostly teenagers who spend only 2 years practicing the deadly art of war before returning to their homes. If you believe the old axiom that wars are won not by big armies but by good ones, then you need to know a lot more about the Soviet army than just how many tanks it has. David Martin, CBS News at the Naro-Fominsk military base in the Soviet Union.
In an interview with Tom Brokaw of NBC News, Soviet leader Gorbachev tonight acknowledged that the Soviets have worked on a Star Wars-type missile defense system, but he claimed no Soviet plans to deploy that system.
Introducing new A1 poultry sauce, our first sauce ever meant just for chicken. And because its herbs, spices, and fruit were meant just for chicken, new A1 poultry sauce makes the most of chicken any way you make it.
If you're concerned about heart disease and your doctor advises exercise, the right foods, and an aspirin a day, you should know that heart specialists recommend Ecotrin more than Bayer when they're concerned about aspirin irritation because it's safety coded. Ecotrin, the one heart specialists recommend.
Come on, honey, let's just buy this cheap smoke detector.
But I'd feel more secure with a first alert.
Well, I'd rather save a couple bucks.
Would you trust your family's safety to anything less than a first alert smoke detector?
Chances are we'll never even have a fire.
On those cold, wintry mornings, hot Nestle Quick made with real milk, 'cause a little warmth goes a long way.
The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments today in a unique case involving the American law the value of land and spiritual values of American Indians. Rita Braver reports.
The Indians call it the High Country, this land north of Eureka, California, in the Six Rivers National Forest. For generations, Yurok, Karok, and Tolowa Indians have hiked to this sacred ground for prayer and meditation. They believe the Great Spirit dwells here.
He's here. He set these prayer places for us and the training areas for us. And he left direction how for them to be used. This is the creation of our world here, our life.
But the U.S. Forest Service says the land should be open to use by all and wants to build a road within a mile of the sacred territory. It would be the last 6-mile stretch of a highway linking the small inland villages to the coast. The road would open the neighboring countryside to recreational use, and it would revive a dying lumber industry by allowing access to new timberlands. For employees of the only surviving lumber mill on the coast,
it'd be like a breath of life, I guess. It would be a hope of we can continue our operations here. They don't have to pack up, change their careers, move on, and suffer the stress of unemployment.
The road would bring new jobs to the Indians as well, but tribal leaders say it would also bring too many people, too much noise for quiet prayer.
We might make a few dollars hauling logs, or we might make a few dollars working in the woods, and we would benefit from it personally. But the destruction that is contemplated here is destruction, is everlasting destruction.
And in the Supreme Court today, the Indians argued that construction of the road would violate their First Amendment rights to practice their religion. The Forest Service insisted that Congress gave it the right to decide how to regulate public lands.
The forest should be managed for the best use for all people, and nothing should be set aside for a single particular use.
This was here before any foreigner ever set foot on this land, and it should be left alone.
Now it's up to the Supreme Court to decide how this land will be used forevermore. Rita Braver, CBS News, Klamath, California.
Another honor tonight for one of America's most honored journalists. Eric Sevareid, correspondent and commentator for CBS News for 38 years, is being inducted into the Television Academy Hall of Fame in Los Angeles. Eric was just about present at the creation of CBS News, and through all the years, no one has brought it more respect. And that's the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather. See you tomorrow. Good night.
It's the Subaru year-end clearance! The greatest Subaru deals in Subaru history! Stupendous Subaru savings!
Hold it! Instead of a great deal of hype, Subaru gives you a great deal. Up to $1,500 factory cash back or 3.9% financing. Enough! You won't be seeing this commercial much longer. Up to $1,500 back or 3.9 will be gone. Subaru's last blast. It's about to self-destruct.
Heartburn again.
Yeah.
You gonna sit there and suffer? Or you gonna take something?
What do you have?
Riopan Plus 2. It's double strength.
I hope it works fast.
How fast can you get to the medicine cabinet?
In lab tests, Riopan Plus 2 starts neutralizing acid in 10 seconds, and 1 teaspoon neutralizes more acid than 2 teaspoons of regular Maalox or Mylanta. That's twice as strong.
You look better.
You want to go out for a banana split?
I'm kidding.
Riopan Plus 2, the fast antacid.
If every time you look around it seems like your rug is dirty, try Woolite Spot and Stain Rug Cleaner. Because it contains the ingredient Fiber Pel, it keeps your heavy traffic areas cleaner longer than the other liquid spray. Trust new Woolite Spot and Stain Rug Cleaner.
Peace and quiet are not part of this job. Headaches are. I used to take aspirin or Tylenol, but today I take Advil. Advil gets rid of my headaches, and it's gentler to my stomach than aspirin. Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
This is CBS.